to another episode of Electable, sponsored by the Indiana Women's Action Movement. I'm Deb Chubb, and we are very excited to be back with Maureen Bauer. So, Maureen, I mean, geez, it was so great getting to know you last year while you were campaigning and doing a wonderful job. And we're so proud of you for getting elected, and also for doing an outstanding job as a very first time politician and state representative from House District 6, doing a great job at the State House, despite, terrible circumstances. So I was so impressed with the way you kept all of the important principles out front. And that was that was such a shining light compared to everything awful that was going on there. Okay, but today we're going to talk about the American Rescue Plan. So as everyone knows, there was trillions of dollars sent from the federal government, and it was, we're going to talk about exactly what that addresses here in Indiana for Hoosiers. And we know that our U.S. senators and our U.S. representatives in Indiana all voted against it. But we want to make sure people know that despite that, these funds are going to support all Hoosiers, whether their representatives voted for this or not. So I consider us very lucky. So Maureen, let's break this down a little bit. Yeah. So there's the big money that went to the stimulus checks. That was the biggest chunk. And then the next biggest chunk is going to local, state, county governments to make up for revenue shortfalls, as well as for infrastructure improvements that can address COVID and prevention of other illnesses. But tell us what items beyond that, because we know what that is, and there's a lot of other stuff, and we won't get to everything. But tell us what you are so excited about as far as addressing the issues that you think are important to Hoosiers.
Well, yeah, you explained it really well. I mean, this is providing relief and direct investments in each of our communities across the state. So every 92 county will receive these funds, regardless if your representatives in Congress voted for it or not. We had 2 congressmen who did vote for it, but not my district. But we will still see that money, and 91% of Hoosiers received that $1,400 relief check. But there's a lot in this plan, so we're just trying to break it down a little bit and explain it a little bit. Some of the stats include the fact that 55% of rural Indiana don't know about this plan, but you will be seeing these funds. So what I like about this the most is that our representatives, overwhelming majority of our congressmen and women throughout the country, saw what happened this past year, 2020, the fact that many women were pushed out of the workforce, had to choose between childcare or going to work. They had to leave their careers. The fact that many people struggled to pay their rent, their utilities, that people just couldn't even put food on the table. In the year 2021, we're still fighting food insecurity across the state. This plan recognized those struggles and is making direct investments in our human infrastructure. Not only that, but it's helping get kids back to school, parents back to work, and that we can gather again socially. It's investing in vaccination programs. It's allowing some time off for you to go get your vaccination. If you are sick the day after, you have some recovery. And so I'm grateful for those elected officials who didn't see this as political, but as real investments back home. You listened and you made sure that we are taken care of. So some of the things I'm most excited about, this plan is making some of the biggest investments in childcare that we've ever seen in the nation. It is expanding the childcare tax credit, which will relieve 80,000 children out of poverty in the state of Indiana. This is truly going to change lives, which is so impactful for families across the state. Our educators and all of our school staff stepped up in incredible ways. And with this plan, We will now be able to raise teacher pay across the state of Indiana to $40,000 a year. Teachers will see hazard pay. And that is something that we at the State House tried to do through legislation and just couldn't get passed due to the supermajorities in the House and the Senate. So that's something we should celebrate and talk about and tell people about. We recognize the importance of our educators, and we want to make sure they stay here. We've had a large amount of our educators either leave the industry of education or leave the state. So this is recognizing the fact that we want you to stay here. We want you to continue to invest in our children and their education. In the budget, we also tried to increase food bank funding that was stagnant at one rate for years and years and years. And as a result of this past year, seeing the lines around the block in my community for just one distribution a week, we recognize that we should be investing in this resource. Nutrition and health is so important to the health of the community. So the original budget, I should state, didn't include these things.
But you're talking about the state budget.
That's right. Yeah, the original state budget that we voted on didn't include this type of investment. So we didn't vote for it in my caucus at the House. But once these funds came through, we were able to invest $2 billion in schools and our students and our educators. We were able to increase food bank funding, which we tried to amend into the budget and was turned down. We were able to increase teacher pay. And one thing I'm so excited about is that Medicaid is expanded 1 year postpartum for pregnant women. And Indiana,
I know that's something that you worked really hard on and couldn't get anywhere. And I've worked in social services for years too, and worked with many low-income moms who had a baby and were immediately cut off from healthcare, and which is just outrageous.
And I've spoken with people in the healthcare industry who state they often don't recognize any health problems until a year after, or even 6 weeks after, which is the current cutoff in Indiana. 6 weeks after you have a baby and you're on Medicaid, you're dropped from your insurance. Right. So if you have gestational diabetes that maybe comes up later, or high blood pressure, preeclampsia, you have no access to your healthcare anymore. So in the state of Indiana, we have the third highest maternal mortality rate. That just means mothers are dying from giving birth. And again, in the year 2021, that is just not a reality we should be living in. So thanks to the funds to the states from the Federal American Rescue Plan, states can expand 1 year postpartum Medicaid. And I'm very grateful for Indiana jumping on board and, again, truly life-saving policy
taking the money.
Yes. I think Illinois was the first state to join, and then Indiana I'm very fortunate that the leaders at FSSA took advantage of this opportunity to help mothers. It's worth noting that 70% of Americans approve of the American Rescue Plan. And, this is a lot of funding that we just couldn't get done legislatively at the State House, just to the makeup of one party rule, basically. So this plan helps all Hoosiers. It doesn't leave anyone behind. And when we experience a year like we did in 2020, we want to see our representatives and our elected officials recognizing the investments in our families, in our school systems, and back at home in our cities and our counties. So this is something that we should be really excited to talk about. So that's why we're here today.
That's great. Well, and it's so alarming that all of the issues, and even issues that affect more rural Hoosiers, were so ignored at the state legislative session. And this really does address a lot of issues for rural Hoosiers, which is really great. Really improves their access to health care and, telehealth and all kinds of community-based health services, which is what people in the rural areas have been asking for. They really need that. And of course, broadband, getting onto the internet, a lot of that from this funding goes directly to improving internet access in rural areas.
250 million will go to rural broadband. Well, to broadband across the state, but again, that's something we heard again and again that is needed. I've been on many Zoom calls where, fellow legislators were dropped from the conversation because of their internet access. And it's true, telehealth has moved online. So absolutely, now we will be seeing those investments in internet and broadband access in Indiana.
Yeah, and when you talk about women who got forced out of the workforce, they lost not only their jobs, but of course they lost their seniority, their promotions, their professional development, and of course their earning potential. And many people lost their insurance. And so one of the other elements of this funding, which I think is great, is that it expanded the subsidies for people getting onto Obamacare, like on the exchange. So the subsidies for just getting on insurance, just going on healthcare.gov or whatever it is, and signing up for insurance, the premium that individuals pay is much lower.
Right.
And so more people can get on.
They opened the enrollment during the pandemic, so people were able to find access to affordable health care, which is something we continue to talk about and try to expand in the state. And you can sign up now for health insurance if you need it. And it's based on your income. So it is affordable, quality health care. And that is now open enrollment and started during the middle of the pandemic, but continues to go on.
So when we were talking earlier, we talked about all of the money that's going to local towns and counties and cities. And you had said you didn't know what they were going to spend it on. And the reason we don't know is because they have to make a plan. And so I certainly at my local level have been really encouraging people to say, what should we spend this money on? Talk to your city council people. The parameters are fairly broad. There's a lot of money that can be spent on employees, bonuses for people who were essential workers, which they define as, I think, a worker who touched some product that was touched by someone else, physically touched. And so it's pretty broad. And that funding can go in terms of wages or bonuses. And so that's an important one. So many people just kept on working because they had to, and we all needed them to. And now is the time that they should be recognized and financially recompensed for that extra service that they gave. But also infrastructure. What can we do to improve our water quality, to help get everybody clean water? That is what we need, to make sure that we're safe and our health is taken care of, from being clean from viruses and having good access to clean water. That's a great one. And all of the other infrastructure issues that can be improved using this money.
Right. And that includes in school buildings, ensuring that the air system and the water system are up to speed, and that children and students and teachers and staff are working in a healthy environment and have a safe learning environment. There's also funding in the American Rescue Plan to address homelessness and to address, rent and utilities. HUD has $100 million to allocate throughout a dozen counties in Indiana to ensure that people stay in their homes and to address affordable housing and services for people who might be experiencing homelessness. And the amount to food banks across the state would be $12 billion, and that's to expand SNAP and WIC, so that's mothers and babies. So the investments in our infrastructure, but also our human infrastructure, which I think is so important. We want to know where our tax dollars are going, and we want to see those investments being made in us and in our families, and to know that, people are seeing us and hearing us. And that's really something that I think was reflected in this investment in the American Rescue Plan.
Yep. One of the items that you'd mentioned earlier, expanding access to childcare. Another form of that assistance is in small business grants. So those could be childcare centers and licensed childcare homes who could improve their facilities, making them safer in light of COVID, and helping them take more children in. And because as you well know, childcare is the #1 obstacle for women to have financial security. And so it's a delight to me to see this kind of investment in high quality childcare, because that's what's really going to get women back into the workforce.
Yes, I just met with someone the other day, and she continued to work through the pandemic, but she didn't have childcare for her kids. So she was at that point where she had to decide what to do. And that is very common for the fact that many families had to make that choice. So these grants do include funding to small businesses, the daycare centers that will continue to keep their doors open and continue to care for our youth and continue to allow mom and dad to go to work. And this strikes the right balance between the workplace and childcare and ensures that women have their rightful place in Indiana's workforce. So I'm really excited to see that. This plan is estimated to cut child poverty by half. It expands the child tax and dependent credit. So you automatically will receive a check starting next month until the end of the year if you have a child and you filed your taxes. And that's something that will truly go back into childcare and their development and continue to make these investments in our future leaders. So recognizing that investment is very important.
Yeah, all of the federal assistance that has come from the Biden administration has really done a good job, and people have to admit that it really has stimulated the economy. Our economy is driven most by consumer spending, and so to drive the economy, we have to get money into the hands of consumers so that they can spend it, so that they are creating jobs, and so that at each step of the way, they're paying a little bit of tax that comes back to the government so that they can reinforce these sorts of services. And so, so even starting with the CARES Act, getting money into the hands of people really did inspire an uptick. And that, in fact, is one of the reasons that our budget grew suddenly at the state level at the last minute, because we realized that all of this federal funding that was going to go to consumers was going to increase the tax revenue to the state, which allows then the state to do more. And thank goodness at the last second that was recognized, and that finally the state legislature said, okay, finally, I guess we have this extra money, then we'll give something to teachers. Exactly. So it happened, and it's wonderful. But I can't help but be a little, bitter about it being the last thing on the list, only happening when we happen to unexpectedly get more money.
Right. So in a year where we expected budget shortfalls, we actually had an expanded surplus. So it's good to see those tax dollars being spent and not just kind of put away in a safe to tout about our expanded surplus. So it is something to be excited about, and continue to see these investments in the future. We don't want this to be a one-time thing. So that's something to look forward to.
Right. And things that I see coming that we will have to address, and one of them is in education. And the fact is that even though we gave starting teachers higher pay, and we have the capacity to give teachers bonuses, retroactive bonuses or wages for their outstanding heroic work during the pandemic, we still are going to have a big shortage of teachers. Many of them, more than usual, just retired, and they said, that's it, I'm done. And others just, they stuck it out, but they still are not ready to come back and do it again. And fewer people are going to school to become teachers, as you mentioned before. So, so those are the things that we're going to have to look out for in the next session, where I'm sure you'll go back and do even more great work. And of course, you have to wonder what's going to happen to the money that our governor, along with about 24 other governors, said no thanks to, and that was the supplemental unemployment funding that the governor is cutting off much earlier than was expected.
Right.
So I had the number in my head. I think it was like $1.5 billion, I think is the amount that Indiana is sending back and just saying, no thanks. So, which is just, you can't believe that the governor is really believes that you can starve people into taking low wage jobs.
Right. And the fact is our unemployment is lower than it was in 2018. So one thing that I recognize and many others recognize is the value of the worker. We really had this celebration of the American worker throughout the pandemic. People who stepped up, our teachers included. And now maybe you don't want to work 2 jobs. You want to be home to help your kid with homework in the evening instead of running off to your second shift. And that helps develop the child and, keeps our community safer because mom and dad are there and we have, this kind of support system year round. And
absolutely. And it allows teachers to put more energy into their teaching job instead of, being exhausted from going home and then getting on their uniform and going to work at the Dollar General for the evening. So it is, and it was always shocking to me in my community when I would go to Myers or any big box stores in town, and I would see teachers in their working shifts.
They had no choice but to work 2 jobs, and I recognize that. And we also need to understand that our workforce is aging. We have our baby boomers who are now getting towards retirement, and the fact that we will have less workers might be a reality. And then also that goes back to, healthcare and ensuring that they can age gracefully in their homes and we are taking care of all of their healthcare needs throughout that retirement so they can be happy and healthy. And so, there's a lot of things to look forward to in the future and to continue advocating for.
Absolutely. And I did see, I frankly think this will probably discourage even more people from going into education, but our legislature passed a bill that allows teachers to become licensed with much less training. And that, of course, does not seem like the right answer to me. The answer would be to fund more people to get quality, college educations. To become teachers. That would be a little more effective, I think. And everywhere in the last, decade or so, higher education has just become prohibitive. It's just too expensive. So nobody wants to go out there and take out a bunch of loans to get a college education to then not be able to afford to pay it, to pay the loan back.
And I say if the price of a house and a car and your college education continues to go up, we need to keep wages competitive and continue to increase those. It's well known that Indiana $7.25 minimum wage is one of the lowest in the nation. So
yeah, it's unbelievable. And I have been out here kind of touting the notion that now is the time to organize, for workers to organize, to wherever you work, however small your company is where you work, you can still organize. Collective bargaining is really, it's not such a term of art. It's an actual thing. It's an actual just word to, where you come together and you go to the employer and you say, we all think we should be making more money. And we would like you to pay us more money. So I think now is the time to do that. And I hope that people do. And of course, people say, well, what about the teachers? The teachers have a union already and look what's happened to them. And the fact is that the state legislature in Indiana has so crippled unions, including teacher unions. So teachers unions are just, they don't do what they could because of the state legislature and how they've really crippled them in terms of being able to, bargain collectively, collect dues. There was another bill this year that passed that made it much harder for teacher unions to collect dues, and only teacher unions, no other unions.
Yeah, it was quite insulting to teachers. As though they didn't know that that they were having their dues collected.
I mean, it requires all this opt-in over and over, opting in for each, each payment. So yeah, so the state legislature just continues to, like you say, just insult teachers. And so that is going to be an ongoing problem here in Indiana. And I don't know
also,
what we're going to do about it. Well, I won't digress too much, but I will say I was like irritated to see our US Senator touting a bill that he got passed to create competitive grants for states to do kind of technical education. And, like, well, that's great, but Indiana is never going to be in the running because we don't support education. And it takes education to be innovative. So,
yeah, and be
that bill is a
competitive with
waste
the
of
other
time.
states. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great for all the other states, but Indiana's never going to get that. How about spending some money on just supporting higher education for Hoosiers?
Right.
So,
And to
okay,
go
did we miss it? So go ahead.
to the benefits of organizing and creating, a union, is we're still trying to ensure safe workplaces. And, one of the bills I carried was protection for pregnant workers. And, we still don't have workplace accommodations for pregnant women in the state of Indiana. And so,
It is just so shocking and frankly so hypocritical. This notion
so
that women cannot have access to an abortion. So you must be pregnant, but you must also be pregnant, and we will not accommodate your needs as a pregnant woman.
yeah,
We will make you stand on your feet for however long we want, and not give you extra breaks to go to the bathroom, to drink water, to go to your doctor, make sure you have a safe birth.
and there's parts of Indiana that don't have a hospital within the county. So that normal checkup is a county over. So,
Yeah.
we hope that a woman carries the baby for 9 months. We want to ensure that she, has a full term pregnancy. And so if we want to see that, we should ensure she has, first of all, her rightful place again on the job in the workforce, that she isn't pushed out of the workforce just because she's pregnant for 9 months, but also for her health. Again, Indiana has the third highest maternal mortality rate in the nation. And we have the seventh highest infant mortality rate in the nation. So if we truly want to change that, and we see the investments of keeping a mother and her unborn child safe until they're born and a year after, which is, that kind of goal.
It is a critical time. It really is a critical time for baby and mom.
Yeah.
And not even the tangible things, the postpartum depression that is, it comes in much higher rates among lower income and women of color.
Yes.
So those women who are more often on Medicaid are getting less services and less attention for what can be really, hugely impactful conditions after birth.
Yeah. So yeah, we see a lot of investments with the American Rescue Plan in our healthcare system, and we want to continue to see those investments made in the state of Indiana. I'm excited to see the data of the postpartum Medicaid expansion for pregnant mothers, and the investments in childcare and education, and hopefully encourage more to become teachers and educators in the state. And we will continue to support you, and we have to ensure we make these investments in the next generation, which is so important.
Yeah, so I think we really have to just call this the Democratic Rescue Plan, because it really is, and we're very lucky that Democrats care about everybody.
Yeah, no
They want to make
Republican
sure everybody
voted for
gets
this, unfortunately, but whether you're Democrat or Republican in the state of Indiana, you will see these benefits. So it's about recovery, and we're better when we do it together. So
That's right. And yeah, we need everybody. We need everybody. You can't say that enough. We need everybody to be healthy. We need everybody to have access to school and education and work and childcare. Or it's not going to be pretty.
Absolutely.
That's true. All right. So thank you again, Maureen, for giving us all of this great information. Again, you did such a wonderful job in the state legislature in your first term. I'm very excited to see how it goes next time. And I hope you continue on. House District 6 is very lucky to have you there. You are doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate it. Good talking with you. And thanks for sharing the news about the American Rescue Plan and what's coming to your neighborhood and your community.
It's very exciting. Okay. All right. See you next time, Maureen.
Bye.